Honorable Member, Non-Constituency MP, Ms. Sylvia Lim. Members of fraternal opposition parties, members of community groups, relatives, honorable distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I extend a warm welcome and thank you all for your attendance and support of this dinner tonight, being the 25th anniversary of my tenure as an opposition member of parliament for Tong 25th. I am also happy to see so many old familiar faces, those who have with me started when I started my politics. And I thank them all for being here tonight. And we welcome them on this occasion through all these years of trials and tribulations of political life. I thank God for the chance to be still able to address you all as members of parliament for Tong 25th. They were rather lonely years because the opposition in parliament was we were very outnumbered. There were only two of us as elected opposition members compared to 84 members of the PAP. So only about 2% of the opposition were represented in parliament, although about 40% of the vote were cast in favor of the opposition. Therefore, it is one of the tasks of the opposition is to alter the balance of power between the PAP representation and opposition representation in parliament to make opposition representation more meaningful. If there is insufficient opposition representation in parliament, its presence in parliament is meaningless and not a true representation that Singapore has a democratic system like that of UK, USA or Australia. If Singapore's aim is to build a democratic society and be a first world country, then Singapore has to open up the system and let us have a fairer, level playing field and give people a chance of voting in more opposition members into parliament. During the 25 years I was in parliament, I took part in 6 elections and won every one of them. However, the real heroes of those victories are the residents of Tong 25th. They showed maturity, courage, bravery. They have made history. They understood how the democratic system works. They know that Tong 25th is where the heart of opposition lies. That the one dominant rule will lead to dictatorship, and without the check and balance of the opposition parties, they therefore outvoted the opposition to ensure that Singapore remains a plural party state, eventually evolving into two-party system. The residents of Tong 25th were also courageous. They were threatened with the withdrawal of government and HDB services and deprivation of HDB upgrading programs, but they still voted me as their opposition member of parliament in the 2006 election. The representation, despite the fact that although Tong 25th estate misses out on the goodies, have limited resources and promised grant of $80 million if they voted for the PAP candidate, but they did not. Though Without HDB's help, the estate does not pale in comparison to HDB was. Testament of this lies in upgrading projects, new covered linkways, and new improved lifts. In my 25 years as an opposition member of parliament, my residents and I have helped change the face of politics in Singapore. The government is now more amenable to hear the public's feedback. Most people now are not afraid to be associated with opposition. In 1984, when I stood and won my first election, the economy grew, did not shrink, as predicted by the PAP. When I first won, only the taxis and men riding bicycles waved to me. Later, it was the men behind the big Mercedes, Jaguars and fancy cars that also waved to me. People perceive that there is hope for more opposition to come in. Another thing I am certain is that it is possible for an ordinary person like me to stand for election and get elected and re-elected, perhaps, provided one conscientiously looks after his constituency, does his parliamentary work, and be imbued with professionalism, honesty, and integrity. By my example, I think this is my greatest contribution to promoting democracy in Singapore, by winning election again and again, and also making Potong Pasir as the heart of the opposition where the opposition lies. I rack my brain to recall what I had done in those 25 years. And here are some of the examples of issues I have engaged in. Number one, CPF objected vigorously to the How Yun Chong report, which refused withdrawal of balanced CPF money by members when they reach the age of 55. The government relented and allowed to not only retaining minimum sum scheme, to allege HDB profiteering on the sale of its flats, challenge How Yun Chong to build, challenged by Mr. Teh Chang Wan to build 4 blocks of flats. I accepted the challenge, but the government did not accept my 19 conditions and the challenge was aborted. Objected to ministers' high salaries, debate on the Marxist conspiracy, call for the release of Chia Taipo, fought for compulsory education in smaller class size. Class size was finally reduced from the size of 40 or 45 down to 20-25 students per class. Argued against the graduate mother scheme, support for more funding of sports, participation in select committees, attended conferences such as ASEAN Interparliamentary Organization every year and Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. I have had the honor of meeting royalty and heads of state